Also an escalate spell. It escalates for 1 and a white. Um, and in this case, there's only two options. So you can either have +2/+0 until end of turn, or you can have +0/+2 until end of turn. And it's creatures you control, so it's not attacking creatures like a couple of the cards have been recently. I like this card. And this reminds me of Fortify. Yeah, there's a card from, what was it, Return to Ravnica? Or not Return to Ravnica, Original Ravnica? Um, yeah. This is basically Fortify with upside. And Fortify was a good card in that in Modern Masters. Yeah, this is strictly better than Fortify. It was a card. It was a pretty good card in Modern Masters. Granted, in Modern Masters 2, there were a ton of token generators. So, if you compare it, you have to consider the context. Fortify in Modern Masters 2 was absurd because you could have like 10 tokens on the field by turn 4 or 5 without too much trouble in that format. So in this format, it's not that strong. Like if Fortify were printed, it wouldn't be that strong, but this card is strictly better than Fortify. So I quite like it, frankly. I think that this card is probably similar to Fortify. Having said that, there's a limited amount of spaces you have for a card like Borrowed Grace in your deck. It's not a creature, and it's not removal. And those are the two most important pieces of basically any limited deck. So, yeah, I don't know. It's hard to really put a value on this, but I think that you're going to want to pick it up earlier than later. Again, flexibility on these Escalate cards is fantastic. So, yeah, I think I agree with that, Rattle Balls. I'm thinking like CC+. You don't want to take it too high because you need a lot of creatures. But this is a very unique effect, and it's a very powerful effect. There are going to be a lot of cases where you attack into your opponent's board, and your opponent has to think about this card, and it's hard to play around. It's a very hard card to play around because, especially if you have 5 mana, but even if you just have 3, if they block so that they try to trade with your creatures, you can give your creatures +0/+2. If they don't block, you can give your creatures +2/+0. And if you have 5 mana, they're completely screwed. So this is a really, really powerful card, but you also have to make sure you're prioritizing creatures. So I'm going to call this a CC+. I think that's about where it belongs. Whoa, why did I... That was weird. So yeah, let's call it CC+. Very powerful, but you only want like 1 to 2 of these effects in a limited deck. That's the key. Like, it's really powerful, but I'm not willing to give it higher than a C+ because you only want 1 or 2 of them in your deck. Even if your deck goes wide, you probably only want 2. All right. Question for chat. Should I go through commons and uncommons first and then do rares in Mythics, or should I do them all in a row? I don't really care. What do you think would be better? So, it's up to you, chat. What do you think? Should we just go in order? Because if we go in order, the next card is Bruna. But I kind of feel like there's some value in talking about the commons and uncommons together and then talking about the rares. Just do them in a row? I see 1 vote for in a row. 2 votes for in a row. But less love for commons. Frankly, I disagree, Bakira. I think that talking about the commons is more important. But yeah, okay. I agree. Let's do it in a row. I will do what chat says. All right, next one. Bruna the Fading Light. 5 white for a 5/7 flying vigilance. Let's kind of ignore... When you cast Bruna the Fading Light, you may return target angel, a human creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Let's ignore that for now. If this was just a 5/7 flying vigilance creature, would you play it in your deck? Maybe? Probably not. I don't know. Like, you might play this in your deck if you have a very controlling deck. However, the extra text where it brings a human to the battlefield, that makes it significantly better. The question is, how good is it? Because this costs 7 mana. Without the cast trigger B minus, ooh, I don't know. I think I'd rate this like a C plus or a C without the cast trigger. 7 mana is a lot. We don't know yet how fast the format's going to be. There are probably going to be some very fast cards in the format, or very fast decks in the format. 7 mana is a lot. If you're playing against an aggressive deck, this is always going to be a mulligan, right? Or you kind of have to think of it as a mulligan, because you get to 7 mana around turn maybe 10 or 11 on average, which is hard. That's hard. But the fact that it gets a human or angel back from your graveyard to the battlefield, that ups its value. But when you take this, you definitely have to draft around it. I don't know if I'd call this a solid A. I think that this is in the range of B+. And my logic is that just 7 mana. 7 mana is a ton. It is a huge amount of mana. Don't take this too highly. That's just kind of like, that's how I would recommend that people think about this card. It's a really good bomb, but you only want 1 7 mana bomb in your deck in most situations, unless you can accelerate them somehow. So let's call this a B, B+. Very powerful, obviously, but expensive. And also remember, you can probably pick up more than 1 bomb at 7 mana in an average draft. So even if Bruna is better than the other bomb you could pick up, the fact that you're picking up Bruna means that you can't take that other bomb. And if you pass Bruna for like a good piece of removal, for instance, you could still take that other bomb and still have that top end to your deck. So, just always remember what you're passing up. Always remember the opportunity cost of picking a card. Obviously, in Sealed, you don't have to think about that, but in Draft, I think it's worth considering. Let's keep going. By the way, if you have opinions, feel free to talk about them. If this set, or feel free to mention them, and I'll try to get to them. If this set is going to look anything like BFZ or Oath of Gatewatch, it's going to be really good. Yeah, for sure. And note that BB+, it could be better than that. It might be worse than that. I'm really not sure, because we don't yet know how fast the format's going to be. I think it's going to be a slower format than Shadows. That's my hunch. So that's why I'm willing to give it a BB+. But if that was in Shadows, I don't think it'd be as good as Drogskill Cavalry. And I'd call that card a BB+. So if Bruna the Fading Light was in Shadows, let's go back and look at it for a second. If this card was in Shadows, I think it'd probably be a C+, B-. Probably B-. So, anyways, let's keep going. Choking Restraints, 2 out of white. Enchanted creature can't attack or block. Okay, so it's pacifism, and then you can also sack it to exile the creature. So it's a slightly more expensive pacifism. Which you can sacrifice to exile the creature for 5 mana. This isn't something you're going to do very often until late in the game. You think it'd be better than Drogskill? I disagree. I think that Drogskill would be better than Bruna, because if you untap with Drogskill Cavalry, you basically win the game. If you untap with Bruna, you might not. But in any case, yeah, Choking Restraints. So I quite like this. This is like a classic example of efficient white removal. The fact that it can go to the graveyard, and I believe there's some cards that bring enchantments back from the yard, but I might be wrong. The fact that it goes to graveyard is good both for Delirium and also for graveyard synergies. So yeah, Choking Restraints, I like it. Let's call this a B. This is like classic good removal. Classic removal in white. I like it. By the way, if you would like access to the spreadsheet, you can click that link, and that will allow you to put comments in the comment column. So feel free to do that. Collective Effort. Let's see. 1 white for a sorcery. Escalate. Tap and untap creature you control. Smurfs are people. Emerges relevant here. You think it ends up with C+. That's a good point. It could end up worse than B. We'll see how common emerges, but most of them are uncommon, so we'll see. Anyways, collective effort, 1 white, white, sorcery, escalate, tap and untap creature you control. Okay, so this one's a bit different. Instead of paying more mana, you're just tapping untapped creatures. Remember, it is a sorcery, so unless your creatures have vigilance, you're not going to be attacking and then doing this. Also remember, you won't be doing this at instant speed unless you have shenanigans. With that, with that in mind, it is a very powerful card because the first option, destroy target creature with power 4 or greater, that would already be playable and limited. If you just had 1 white, white, sorcery, destroy target creature with power 4 or greater, that'd already be playable. How often you'd play it, I don't know. Like, that might be sideboard. But it also has other text because you can destroy target enchantment, and there are some relevant enchantments. We just talked about one, choking restraints, right? But you could also, there's other things out there, so kind of relevant but not super. The last one, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature target player controls. That's the big one. This is probably the mode you're going to cast the most, followed by destroy target creature with power 4 or greater. They're going to be close, but I'd imagine most of the time when you cast this spell, you're going to be casting it with the first and last mode, tapping like a 1/1. That's pretty sweet. The other little tricky thing you can do, by the way, remember, if your opponent has 1 3/3, like let's suppose, what's the best 3/3 in the format? Or what was the best 3/3 or 3/4 or 3/5 or something in Shadows? What, maybe Sin Prodder? I guess that's a 3/2, right? Remember Sin Prodder, the 3/2? Let's suppose you don't want to deal with the Sin Prodder. You could put a +1/+1 counter on it, assuming it's the only creature they have, and destroy it. Olivia, there you go, yeah. So let's suppose your opponent plays turn 3 Olivia or Olivia, yeah. You could collective effort, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Oh, crap, never mind. It doesn't work that way. Because the spell resolves in order. Herpaderp, that's a punt. That doesn't work. So, okay, we just identified something you can't do. All right? We just identified something you can't do. So don't try to do this. Don't try to put +1/+1 counters on your opponent's creature and destroy it because it resolves in order. So Herpaderp, don't do it that way. At least I'm making the mistakes for you. All right? So, in any case, this is a sweet card. It's very flexible again. If you're winning, this is great because you can make your stuff bigger and win faster. If you're losing, great. It destroys their power 4 guy and makes your creatures bigger. If your opponent has an enchantment that you need to get rid of, it's also great. This is a fantastic card. Let's call this like a B+. It does need... It's a little conditional. If your opponent has something that's power 3, you can't deal with it. If you don't have creatures, this isn't fantastic, right? But this is a really solid card, so I think it's close to an A. It's close to an A, I'd say. It does not do much against decks that are swarming you, though. But since this is a white card, exactly, Mats. Yeah, exactly. So don't do what I'm doing. Don't do what I just said. That was dumb. But yeah, I think this is about a B+. What do you guys think? B+, A? While I'm waiting for chat to catch up with me, we'll move on to the next one so you can see what it is. Here we have Courageous Outrider, 3 and a white. When it enters the battlefield, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a human card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Okay, and it's a 3/4. So 3/4 for 4 is already playable, especially considering it's a human, so that's relevant text sometimes. If it just said 3/4 for 4 mana, I would call it probably a C- or a C. Probably a C, actually. That's probably about where it'd be. but it also gets to get a human into your hand sometimes. Now,